From the West Coast, attorney and minister Vicky Curry Jackson from the law office of Vicky C. Jackson in Tacoma, Washington. From the Midwest, attorney and minister Sheila R. Stewart from the law office of Sheila R. Stewart in St. Louis, Missouri. From the Central Region, attorney and minister Urena Ricks Johnson from Ricks and Associates, West Bloomfield, Michigan. And from the East Coast, attorney and minister Rossi Williams from Rossi Williams Law Group in Miami, Florida. So watch the Attorneys TV show, live streaming every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube and Facebook. Follow and share tonight's show now on Facebook and YouTube. And don't forget to live chat with the attorneys during tonight's show. And now, let's join the attorneys. Welcome, everyone, to the Attorneys TV show. We are very excited to have you here with us again for another dynamic broadcast. On tonight, I am your host for this week's show, Attorney Rossi Williams in Miami, Florida. And I have here with me my co host from West Bloomfield, Michigan, Attorney Urena Ricks Johnson. Will you greet our viewers on tonight?
Hello to our viewing audience. We have a great show for you today.
Now, tonight, attorney Vicky Curry Jackson from Tacoma is out. Her husband has passed away. We offer our prayers and we ask you to just in the chat box tonight, let her know that you're praying for her as well. Additionally, attorney Sheila Stewart from St. Louis, Missouri, our other co host, is out tonight. But we have with us a very special guest co host. Here also from the beautiful place of Miami, Florida, we have attorney Travis Randolph. Attorney Travis, can you greet our viewers and just take a minute and introduce yourself to everyone tonight?
Hello, everyone. My name is Travis Randolph. I'm an attorney in Miami, Florida. My law firm is the largest women and minority-owned firm in the country with our headquarters office in Miami, Florida. My practice consists of civil litigation defense, and I've been practicing for about 20 years here in Miami, Florida. I began my career in the public defender's office, and then I switched over to civil litigation. I'm very, very happy to be here and a part of this group. As a veteran of the United States Army, I am happy to be here and lend my information to people, and I look forward to this rousing discovery and discussion tonight.
Excellent. And we are excited to have you. Now, Travis, before we move on, if anyone wanted to contact you, how would they do so?
They can just send me an email at travis.randolph@qpwblaw.com.
All right. Thank you so much. And remember, viewers, we are here streaming, live streaming every Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube and Facebook, the Attorneys TV show. You can live chat with us tonight. Now, let's get to the topic at hand. We want to talk about Afghanistan. This has been a very polarizing situation wherein President Biden has withdrawn the troops. We've seen the collapse of the government. We've seen the Taliban take over there. We've seen all kinds of very graphic pictures and footage. And so tonight we want to deal with the question of whether or not the U.S. should have pulled those troops out of Afghanistan. You know, we deal with current events, no holds barred, and it will be no different on tonight. So let's talk about first what we saw. Prior to this drawdown of the troops, President Biden and all of his leaders were on the news and they were assuring the American people that Afghanistan was ready for this drawdown. They were telling us that the Taliban would not be able to come in and take over. There were over 300,000 soldiers there who'd been trained by the U.S. for a period of 20 years. These soldiers were ready to stand up and fight, and that government would not collapse. As a matter of fact, they even joked a little bit by saying from Friday to Monday, that government in Afghanistan won't collapse if we pull out. Ironically, that's exactly what happened. The US pulled out and everything collapsed. So I'd like to start off with you tonight, Attorney Trovis and Attorney Urena, by asking the question of should the United States have pulled out its troops at this time? And if so, why do you think so? If not, why not? Attorney Trovis, you mentioned that you are a veteran. We're going to start with you. Should the U.S. have pulled the troops out?
Yes, it was time. It was time for us to come to an end, to a conclusion of this engagement. And, as been said, there's never a good time. There's never a perfect time. There's never a correct time. However, a timetable was laid out. It was spelled out about our withdrawal. The people wanted it. The people of the United States were tired of a seemingly endless war, and there seemed to be no plan to scale down or pull out until a plan was made. And so a plan was drawn up, decisions were made. This was, for better or for worse, the time to do it. And during the time frame that we set out, we actually went over the time that we were supposed to pull out. But I think that pulling out was inevitable. It was just a matter of scheduling a time that we can put on the books, put on the table, and make that happen. And that's what happened. And here we are today.
So when you say that the people wanted it, but now we see people very upset about it because of the collapse, did the people really want this pullout at this particular time?
Well, when you're referring to the people of the United States, if you look at the latest polling, most of the people here were tired of being in, what was labeled an endless war, and we're ready for our troops to come home. Our mission there was never really defined in terms in which that we can say we're going to be at this stage at this point, we're going to be at this stage at this point, and then by stage 3 or whatever, we would be pulled out. And so, and instead of having these endless deadlines that seem to stretch on forever, a decision was made, and that decision was welcome. Now, the execution of it and the actual planning of it, that is what receiving the scrutiny. So people are not really that much, agitated because we pulled out. It is the way that things are being executed that's causing the problems and the consternation.
Thank you. Attorney Urena, what do you say about this? Should the U.S. have pulled the troops out at this time?
I do tend to agree with my co-host that it was time to pull out. It was time for someone to come up with a plan for our commander-in-chief to be commander-in-chief and start to make a plan to withdraw, because I believe that it was going to never be a good time. It was never going to be a really good time in order to pull out. But I think that the troops have been there. They have assessed what has been going on. Things have happened. But I do believe that even with the Taliban and what has happened, I don't think that pulling out at this time really prompted the Taliban to be even more powerful. I know the Taliban has always been there. So it's the way the media or the way that it's being portrayed, I don't think that it's as bad as it is being portrayed. And I think it was time to pull out.
I do have to agree with both of you tonight. Usually on the attorney's viewers, I'm sure you know, we're not always in agreement. And that's one of the great things about the show is because you have different attorneys, you have different perspectives. But I do agree that it was really, if not now, when? We're talking about 20 years of having been there. And I really wondered after seeing the outcome of this, whether the people of Afghanistan were even really preparing for us to ever pull out. I do believe it was the right time. I have to agree with Attorney Trovis that the execution, it just seemed so chaotic. I believe this could have been executed a lot better than this. And I'll say to our viewers, live chat with us tonight and you answer that question as well, whether or not you believe it's time for us to have pulled out. Now, I'd like to move over a little bit to talking about who is to blame for this fiasco. This has been a very polarizing event. And of course, we've seen all across the news stations, social media commentary, and everywhere else where people are discussing this, that the public is trying to determine, is this a Bush issue, an Obama issue, a Trump issue, or a Biden issue? They're saying, well, Bush sent these people over here to start this quote, never ending war, unquote. Obama kept them there. Trump announced that he would pull them out, and then Biden then pulled them out. I'd like to know from you, and I'll start with you this time, Attorney Urena, as we're talking to the people tonight, which president or which presidents would you lay to blame for this? Who do we lay this at the feet of, this fiasco?
I would say all of the above. I would say each one of them has a part in it. I do think that I don't think that President Bush did enough research to figure out a plan when he first sent the troops over there. And I don't think anyone after that came up with an effective plan, including President Biden, which is what we're talking about right now. I don't think that his plan has been as effective as it could have been. But I do think that time should have been taken in order to make sure that whatever mission that was going on in Afghanistan, that there was a plan in place, that we accomplished that plan within a certain period of time, and that the troops were allowed to come back home.
Attorney Trelvis, we're talking about people's sons and daughters for 20 years dying over in Afghanistan, families being separated. Which president or presidents is or are to blame for this fiasco ultimately regarding Afghanistan?
Well, I think that President Biden said it best. The buck stops here. You know, as the commander in chief of our armed forces, the president holds the responsibility for troop deployment, troop movement, whatever wars or engagement that we are involved in. The president holds it. We can't say that, there's one president at fault, because we're looking at 20 years here and the span of presidents that have been in power during that 20-year period. I will say that when we decided to enter into this engagement, and make no mistake about it, this is something that we decided to enter into, we should have had a plan for the rules of engagement, the length of time, or the specific goals that we're going to achieve, and how do we get out of this entanglement. I mean, just throwing a bunch of soldiers in harm's way without having a plan to pull them out is irresponsible, and it is irreprehensible. And so we were dealing with a situation in where we were putting our American citizens in harm's way without having a clear plan about what is the end result that we're seeking, how are we going to get there, and how do we take care of the troops once that job is done. Since this was an open-ended war with no actual end goals in sight that were attainable within one administration, it carried over into the next administration. And that administration had the burden of taking on the responsibility of the prior administration and to provide for the safety of the troops that were there. It started with President Bush. It lays at his feet about his goals and ideas for this engagement. And then it continued on as each president grappled with the objectives of the initial engagement and how do you pull troops out safely. It was never going to be something that was done with the approval of everybody involved, because everyone had different opinions about it. Each president had a different strategy about it, until President Trump made the announcement that we were going to pull the troops out of Afghanistan, and President Biden was actually left with the execution of that pullout plan. And so as you go down through the years and the history of the engagement, you can't lay blame at one president's feet. But President Biden said, this is what I inherited. I'm going to stop it. We made a plan. We made a promise. I'm going to execute on that. I'm going to pull a trigger.
All right. Attorney Urena and Attorney Trelvis, I have to go with the last two presidents here because I felt like President Bush had no choice. This was after 9/11. I felt like President Obama did what he went in to do, which was to deal with Osama bin Laden. But I felt like by the time we got to President Trump, it was time to really start pulling these troops out. And in corporate America, they have what they call that SWOT analysis, right?
Mhm.
Where they're looking at your strengths, your weaknesses. I think it's what opportunities and threats or something to that effect. I don't feel like President Trump really started laying the appropriate groundwork to be ready to pull out the troops, although he was making these announcements that the troops needed to come home. And I don't think President Biden followed up with that as well. as a result, although we've withdrawn our troops, we're now in a situation where there is a possibility we'll be right back over in Afghanistan. So I really go back to Presidents Trump and Biden and saying that they could have done better and they should have done better. They didn't prepare these people. And that leads me to this next thing that we want to talk about. There's been some very graphic footage, and I want to say to our viewers that the footage you're about to see, it is graphic, showing the people jumping on the planes as the planes were leaving, jumping on the wings of the planes, and even some people falling out of the air from these planes, so desperate to get away. We're going to watch the footage of people falling midair from the planes. And then I'd like to for us to discuss whether or not this is really the picture of the US that we want to portray, that this is how we leave people when we pull out. So let's take some time right here and let's view this footage. Okay, that was so horrible. Every time I've watched that, I couldn't believe it to see people falling out of off of a plane midair. Attorney Travis, the United States is supposed to be the moral leader of the world. We're the humanitarian leader as well. Yet we see people falling off of planes and so desperate to get away that they're jumping on the wings of planes as a result of this pullout. So, is this the picture that we want to portray to the world of what happens when the United States gets involved in the affairs of other countries?
I would like to just to say this was a picture of people who are running to escape the government of the Taliban, which is encroaching in. And so this is not something that I would say reflects, the United States standing in the world, but it reflects the situation there at that particular time. Remember, these are people who are in an airport in a city that is surrounded by Taliban forces and Taliban troops. There is no real exit out except for these airplanes. And desperate people do desperate things. And, I don't think that you can lay the foot of responsibility for the acts of desperate people solely on the United States and this pullout effort. True, I think that everybody will agree that it wasn't the most perfect pullout of all, but it was something that was planned. It was something that was going on. And desperate people will do desperate things. And these images are horrible. We never, ever want to see these types of images of people and what they will do when they are in a desperate situation. However, I don't think that you can solely lay the blame on the United States. United States armed forces are not in control of the city. They're not in control of the region. They're not in control of the people who are surrounding this airport and surrounding the municipality and slowly creeping in. That's what people are running from. They're not running from the United States and the United States forces. They're running from this organization that is threatening to take over the government. And so they're running out of desperation, clinging on to hope. And the hope comes in the form of those airplanes that are taking off the runway.
But Attorney Travis, but for the U.S. pulling out the way it did, it is arguable that we would not have seen this. So do you think that, or it sounds like you're saying you don't believe that the U.S. really has any fault in those particular things of what we've seen? Is that
No, I'm
what
not
you're
saying that. What I am saying, and one thing we should not forget, is that the forces employed by the United States is not the majority of military force over there. There's the whole Afghanistan country that has an army of people who are serving in the military. And where are those people at this time? Because this is their country. These are their people who are in need, and this is their fight, so to speak. We're there to lend a hand. We're there to lead expertise. We're there to train. We're there to provide. But you have a whole military operation of the country, the nation of Afghanistan. Where are they? Okay, so you can't just say that we are the only armed forces there, and so we should be responsible for everything that happened militarily there, because we were there to train troops and forces. And where are they enforcing the peace? Where are they keeping the security? Where are they taking care of the people of their country? That's what we were there for. We were not the police. We were there to help the police provide for that country, that nation. So again, we can't lay all of this at the foot of the United States. This whole scene, we're the only one visible because we're the only ones there, and we shouldn't be the only ones there. So we need to take a little bit of perspective about what we're seeing and what's happening on the other side of the camera.
Wow, thank you. That was a powerful answer. Viewers, make sure you're giving us your answers tonight too. Live chat with us on YouTube and Facebook. Again, we have a special guest co-host tonight because I know you're not accustomed to seeing Attorney Trelvis, but that is Attorney Trelvis Randolph here in Miami, Florida, who has joined us tonight. And he is also a military veteran board off of the responses that Attorney Trelvis was just giving in relation to the fact that we were there, we've trained the people, we've equipped them well. Many people are wondering whether or not we should even be trying to fight for people who wouldn't fight for themselves. As soon as we withdrew and the Taliban came in, it appears the people immediately surrendered, and now they need our help again. I ask you, should we be fighting for people who won't fight for themselves? And if we are requested to return in this matter, should the U.S. return to provide further military assistance?
I think at this point, as we stated before, the right decision was made. I don't think that the United States should stay there and continue this fight. I do believe that there has been time that has been given for training, for equipping the citizens of Afghanistan in order to move forward and really take ownership of their country and really fight for it. So I think that the United States has shown how to fight for your country. And if they're not willing to do so, then I definitely don't think that we should return, because we've provided the information, we provided the troops, we provided training, and I think that we've done above and beyond for the past 20 years.
I do have to agree with you there. And I know it's really hard. It's like a tug of war, it's a moral dilemma. On the one hand, you see the fallout of what has happened to these people. You see the women who are so afraid of what's going to happen to them under the fundamentalist rule of the Taliban. We see all of these things, but I just keep saying to myself, how long is long enough? And if we go back, will there be any different outcome? How many of our own sons and daughters will we lose to continue to help them? And so that brings me to another issue here. And I'm first going to ask you about this, Attorney Urena. as a female attorney, many of the women in Afghanistan are fearful now that the rights that they have gained and the progress they've made while the US was there will now be taken away from them under the rule of the Taliban. While the US troops were there, they've been able to go to school, gain an education, not have to walk around completely covered all the time. They've just seen a lot of things change in a way to them that was perceived as favorable. Now they fear that life for women will revert back to the way it was under the Taliban. They won't be able to go to school, they'll lose their rights. Should we as a nation, should we be doing more to help the women who are left in Afghanistan under the rule of the Taliban? And if so, what should we do?
I do think that I practice in immigration law, and I do think that maybe some of the things that can be done is that we make it a lot easier for refugees to come from Afghanistan to the United States. We do some changes in our immigration and do some immigration reform that may help them if they are being targeted in Afghanistan and they need that refuge here in the United States, that we give some more credence and we look into our laws a little bit deeper to see if those things can provide some safe refuge for them if they're still experiencing that persecution. Another thing I think that needs to happen is that ownership needs to happen with the leadership that is there that has been trained to do so. It's time for them to step up and protect and do what they can do in order to protect the women that are still there and that have gained these rights over this period of time.
So, as an immigration law attorney, you mentioned maybe bringing these people into the United States, but we're in a global pandemic. We're in COVID-19 with the Delta variant. Would it be safe to bring people into the country when we're already dealing with so many people dying here from COVID?
I do think that that's a risk, but I also think that there is some serious things that are going on in these countries, and if we can provide some type of refuge, I think that we should just look at and examine what steps need to be happening. Maybe we do need to make sure that we provide some type of COVID testing before they're allowed to come. Maybe there is some things that we can do from a medical perspective, but I do think that because this has been going on for so long and there is still a issue of persecution for women and persecution of the people there, I do think that we should ease some of our restrictions. I'm not saying to open the floodgates, but I'm just saying that some of the things could be looked at to see if we can ease some of the restrictions in order to allow some more refugees to actually come over to the United States.
Well, immigration law is your area, it's not mine. I would be saying no, they can't come. Let's see what we can do over
Over there.
there, not here, because we're dealing so much with COVID. Now, what I'd like to do, Attorney Trovis, is turn to a statement which was published or put out by former President Trump regarding this matter. Former President Trump stated that President Biden should resign in disgrace about what happened in Afghanistan, that President Biden has totally let the country down. He's made us a laughing stock. He did not execute this well, and that we are suffering. The United States, our image is suffering internationally because of this debacle. Now, you've served in the military, and President Biden is our commander in chief. If you had to give your own rating or assessment of how you believe President Biden has functioned in this Afghanistan drawdown, what would you say?
Well, first and foremost, what I would say is that I don't think that former President Trump is any authority on being a laughing stock, disgrace, or being a leader and leadership quality. So I don't think that we should start there because the bar would be set so low. However, I will say that, there was something that he said while he was either campaigning or president about letting the adversary know your plans in advance of you actually performing those plans. And in this case, we had a president who made the announcement to the Taliban that the United States will be pulling out of Afghanistan. And this was not a defeated Taliban. This is not a contained Taliban. This was a Taliban that was running rampant across the country. They were playing nice because they still had guests in their country. And, make no bones about it, they had guests in their country. And so when the United States announced that we were pulling out and we had a date that we were pulling out, the only thing they had to do was wait. There's a saying in Afghanistan, United States may hold the watches, but we hold the time. And so only thing they had to do was wait for that to happen because they knew it was inevitable. The people of Afghanistan knew it was inevitable. We gave them a timeline in which we have been gone. And though the people of Afghanistan, they're not thinking about tomorrow. They're not thinking about next week. They're thinking about the rest of their lives. And the United States was going to be gone and out of that country by a certain deadline, which had already been announced. And their thing is, okay, they may do all of this while they're here, but we have to think about what's going to happen when we're gone. And so this is the situation that President Biden inherited because of that deadline that was imposed by President Trump with a deal that he made with the Taliban. And that deal was that they would hold back and they would not harass or engage in troops as much because they knew that the United States would be gone. They knew that they didn't have to expend their troops, their ammunition, their resources, anything. The only thing they had to do was wait because while the United States held the watches, they had the time. And so that was what President Biden was faced when he got in. He knew that there was a deadline and he knew that he could keep the United States forces, our troops, our supply, our support safe within that deadline, within that time frame. But there was no guarantees after that time frame. So he's faced with this dilemma. Do I keep my soldiers there and keep my people in a situation that I know is going to result in bloodshed? Or do I keep this timeline and try to get as many people out as I can? And he chose the latter. And I don't think that there's anybody can say that was not the right thing to do, knowing what was coming after that deadline, knowing what awaited them on the edge of midnight when those troops said, okay, our time is up. And now it's time for us to take back our country because we were a guest in their country. And we didn't want to be the guests who overstayed their welcome. We wanted to be the guests who got out when it was time to go, when we had safe passage, when we had a clear runway, when we had a clear path to get out. And so that's the situation that was faced with President Biden because, and make no mistakes about it, because of the actions that were put in place by President Trump. So no, I totally disagree with former President Trump for all of those reasons and all the other reasons that we don't have to go into because of the last 4 years. Because if you're going to talk about a disgrace, let's talk about the 600,000 Americans who died under his watch.
All right. Oh, whoa. And viewers, I will say to you, make sure you're live chatting your responses to this as well, because here on the Attorneys TV show, all viewpoints are welcome. So this is that place where you can make your viewpoints known. Make sure you're tuning in with us every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. And encouragement is needed. So we just ask very quickly that you bow your heads. Lord, we come tonight and all of our military who have served, who are serving, and those who have given their lives as well as their families, not only in Afghanistan, but in any place of service. We also lift up those people in Afghanistan who are still there and they're in fear of what's going to come down the road and they're fearing their lives. Finally, Father, we lift up every viewer tonight, as well as their family, their friends, their co-workers, their bosses, their neighborhoods. Father, everything that is needed. And for those who are not viewers, we still lift them up and their families, our governments, and our leaders. Lord, people are dying, people are discouraged, people are angry, and people are fighting. We ask that you would give us the love and respect for each other that we had before, that we learn to disagree respectfully, And we ask that as we leave this show tonight, that you would answer prayers and that you would bless and encourage people in ways that only you can do. Bless every homeless person, those in the jails, those in the hospitals, those who are unemployed, those who are worrying about how they will pay their bills. And bless those, Lord God, who are in positions of influence and leadership. Bless every viewer here and every host and our guest. Encourage us again that no matter how bad it gets, we will leave the situation victoriously. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Everyone, you've been watching the Attorneys TV show. We thank you for live chatting with us. Make sure you spread the word because next week we'll be here again with another topic, breaking it down, no holds barred. Attorney Travis Randolph from Miami, Florida. We thank you so much for being here. Can you tell the people again good night and let them know how they can contact you?
Uh, Thank you for having me here. It's been wonderful to have this discussion at this time and on this network. I think that the people are enriched by the conversations that you bring. I think that they are full of knowledge and full of much needed discussions that we need to continue to have in our communities. And anytime that we can gather and have these type of discussions with other people who are willing to give us their opinions, their perspectives, and their wisdom on these types of things, it's always a good thing. So my name is Travis Randolph. I'm an attorney in Miami, Florida. If you like, you can contact me by travis.randolph@qpwblaw.com. I was happy to be here, and I will look forward to my next time appearing here on your show.
Thank you so much. Attorney Urena Ricks Johnson over there in West Bloomfield, Michigan. Can you tell our viewers good night and how they can contact you?
Good night. You can contact me at www.ricks-law.com or at 248-466-0303. And that's Ricks and Associates, PLLC.
I am your host for tonight's show, Attorney Rossi Williams of Rossi Williams Law Group in Miami, Florida. You can contact me on the web, call rossiwilliams.com. You've just watched another exciting broadcast of the Attorneys TV show, breaking down current events, no holds barred. Join the Attorneys TV show live streaming every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube and Facebook. Follow the Attorneys TV show now so you won't miss one show. Share tonight's show, and to contact each attorney for representation, visit their website, watchtheattorneys.com. From the West Coast, Attorney and Minister Vicki Curry Jackson from the Law Office of Vicki C. Jackson in Tacoma, Washington. From the Midwest, Attorney and Minister Sheila R. Stewart from the Law Office of Sheila R. Stewart in St. Louis, Missouri. From the Central Region, Attorney and Minister Urena Ricks Johnson from Ricks and Associates, West Bloomfield, Michigan. And from the East Coast, Attorney and Minister Rossi Williams from Rossi Williams Law Group in Miami, Florida. The Attorneys TV show. See you next Thursday. Spread the word.